All right, hello everyone. Welcome to this week's edition of A Sip of Knowledge from the Road with Marty Duffy, Liz Rhoades, and Lou Bryson, plus this week's special guest, Randy Prasse, President and COO of the Kentucky Bourbon Festival. I'm going to let your host give you a more in-depth introduction to Randy in just a moment. Real quick before we get started, I'm Will Hookinga from Savvy.co. And as always, just want to point out a few different ways you can interact with your hosts and their guests throughout the show today. To your right, you will see a chat box. So feel free to say hello. Let us know where you're joining us from around the world. It's always good to see that. At the bottom of the screen, there's a little button that says Ask a Question. So if you have any questions for Randy, for any of your hosts today, just click that button, type your question in down there. I'll make sure they see it. And last but not least, feel free to invite your friends to join us. There's a share button at the top that makes it really simple to do that. But with all that said, Marty, Liz, Lou, I will turn things over to you now.
Hey, thanks there, Will. You're the best. You know, as the old saying goes, I don't know, tie a yellow ribbon around an elbow tree or something. I didn't think of anything for this week.
Extremely relevant.
Yes. Hi, everyone. My name is Martin Duffy. I'm on location this week in Louisville, Kentucky at the beautiful ADI conference. Come visit me. I am a former master of whiskey for Diageo, 14 glorious years, 18 glorious months as the national brand ambassador for Benedictine French liqueur. So I'm surprised. Yeah, see the light. I think the sunlight started shining on me.
Yep.
8 years as co-producer of the Chicago Independent Spirit Expo, and 4, as of this month, for the last 7 years, the sole brand representative of Glencairn Crystal, all the way from Scotland. Look at that. Look at that. That's as big as my head. Look at that. Size of that. Like that. Oh. Yeah, so anyways, over to little sickly Liz Rhoades.
Thank you very much. Hey, everyone. Thanks for joining. I'm Liz Rhoades, technical distiller and spirit consultant. Have just over a decade of experience in alcoholic beverage, spanning across several different products and substrates, including beer, rum, vodka, but particular favorite and expertise is, of course, in whiskey. And
sorry, Liz, that's always my favorite part of your intro. I love that.
I'm also joining in from the road at ADI as well. So maybe
she's in the room right below me.
Maybe we'll see some folks in person.
Mm-hmm.
Lou?
Thanks, Liz. I am Lou Bryson. I am a whiskey writer. Have been for quite a while. I was managing editor of Whiskey Advocate magazine for 20 years. We'll just leave it at that. And I am currently a senior drinks writer for the award-winning Half Full section of the Daily Beast website. Just had a new piece come out this morning on Oktoberfest, the beer that we get in August that's brewed in March, that's drunk at the October Festival that's actually celebrated in September. So there we are. It's an interesting piece, and it's a little. I'm also plugging my book, Whiskey Masterclass. Whiskey Masterclass is a thank you, Liz. So nice.
You brought it with her. Wow.
Whiskey Masterclass is a look at all the flavor and aroma inputs to a bottle of whiskey, how all that flavor gets in there. And I have it for sale, and I'd be happy to sell you one. I don't know where I'm going anymore, so I'm done.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Louis,
Yes.
but that book is also the basis for the Master of Whiskey certification course.
I believe you're correct. It is a textual book. That's how
important that book is. It's moving the entire bar, like right over there.
The bar?
The bar.
Leave the bar where it is, please.
Bar's on wheels. It's okay. It's a mobile bar. It's all right.
Back to you, Marty.
And so this week, folks,
I'm sorry, I forgot my whiskey this week. I am I'm drinking the new Basil Hayden toast with brown rice, and it is delicious. It is like a turbocharged Basil Hayden when it comes to flavor. There's a lot of stuff in this. Really good.
That's almost like toast with raisins.
Very
similar. That's the notes I'm picking up just from what you said.
All right. I'll waft it to you. There you go. Waft.
All right. Hi, everyone. Well, welcome to this week. And this week, we welcome a very important guest, a man who is going to make big waves in the whiskey tasting event world. As many folks might be familiar with the Kentucky Bourbon Festival. Well, over the last 2 years now, there's been a little bit of a change, a new regime. And that regime is being head up by none other than Mr. Randy Prasse, who is CEO and president. And he's going to fill us in a little bit about what's happening this year, but also the plans for years to come, because it is going to be an evolving beast, from what I understand.
Wow.
Correct me if I'm wrong. But in the meantime, welcome, Randall.
That's a heck of an intro. Thank you.
Well, I always bombasti is my birthright.
And I wanted to jump in and play when you guys were going back and forth, but I know as a guest, I know my role is to be quiet until I'm introduced properly. So now watch out.
Yeah.
I'm in the room now.
So well behaved.
You have been unleashed. Go ahead.
Uncharacteristically well behaved early on. How long do we have here today, by the way?
About 5 minutes.
Yeah, only about another. Actually, I'm going to take up the next 2 minutes. So yeah, you only have about 3 minutes. No, we have a while. We have about an hour. So Randy, what do we want to start off with first is your own background. Where'd you start and how'd you get here? So where's the beginning line, the starting line,
This is where I pull out my best Steve Martin from The Jerk and start. Do I go that far back?
You were in
I think of that every time he starts this. Every time.
What was that? I was
born a poor black sharecropper's child.
Not far from the truth, though. No, actually, I grew up on what is now a 6th generation family dairy farm. Spent most of my life in the wonderful state of Wisconsin. Cheese, brats, and beer. And while everybody started to kind of rebrand themselves to get away from that, I embraced it. I'm like, why would you get rid of that?
I love that.
Milwaukee did a rebranding. Everybody's tired of the cheese and beer stories and funny jokes, and I loved it. I absolutely embraced it, and I still go back and enjoy a lot of good things about the state of Wisconsin. But that is actually where I got started in the event business. I started off as a volunteer, of all places, running the beer garden of my little local festival. I thought it was a pretty good gig. You get to drink beer and watch the main stage and have a lot of fun. And that had morphed into a 12-year volunteer career. And then since then, it's been probably another 16 years or almost 20 years now, actually, a paid career. So I'm one of those few people that really fell in love with the industry and decided I figured out you could make a living at it. And here we are. But my paths have crossed. My farm upbringing paid off. I used to run a couple of big festivals in downtown Milwaukee, and then at the time, the Wisconsin State Fair was making a leadership change, and so my farm upbringing. I used to show cattle as a kid, 4-H kid at the state fair. So to get that opportunity was something that was really a cool opportunity for me, and I treasure those memories. But I started off, it was hemorrhaging money and multi-million-dollar losses. And when I left, 5 or 6 years later, we had posted 3 years of surpluses. So, but it wasn't me. I mean, obviously I was the president or the CEO at the time, but I mean, it was a lot of really good people that did a lot of work and a lot of just common sense things that weren't getting done. And so that's kind of my approach to everything we're doing, is the common sense approach. Ask a question, and then the answers are usually right there in front of you as to why and how. And has basically served me well in this role here with the festival. We knew a lot of things had to had to change, and we knew why. But I was the one that they brought in to do the how. So, I fast forwarded a little bit there. I mean, I spent some time, as we're sharing offline. I was in Gettysburg for a number of years, working tours in there, and I started a couple of craft beer festivals that still, unfortunately, with COVID, they haven't been able to happen in the last 2 years. But beyond that, that was kind of my legacy for Gettysburg, was that craft beer festival. People had talked about it for years, and another movie quote, and one of my favorites is Tuco from The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. He's sitting in the bathtub full of soap, and somebody's talking about, he's going to shoot him, and he just shot, and he says, when it's time to shoot, don't talk. And that's kind of been my philosophy. No more movie quotes, I promise.
No, that's all right. I think that quote was
that
also
happens on this show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I use that quote all the time when I'm actually
In the bath?
Now I'm shooting people.
From the bathtub.
Yeah.
Liz, watch out.
Every time.
If you're really below Marty there, be careful to make sure your bathtub isn't
There's
right
a
below.
leak in your ceiling. You'll see it under ceiling. So Randy, you're recruited. Now there were problems. The Kentucky, and I've never understood how or why, but supposedly originally the Kentucky Bourbon Festival was losing money, or what, it was struggling somehow. But now you've come in. Can you give us an idea of what are you changing and what needed to be changed?
Sure. Well, I mean, I joke all the time that this is a first-year festival with a 30-year history. And for anybody who's familiar, it's literally, this is the 30th year of doing this festival. And for 28 of those years, you couldn't actually go to the festival and sample whiskeys. So as odd as that sounds, if Jim Beam and Wild Turkey and Maker's Mark would have these elaborate exhibits, these little cabins and houses and stuff built, but you'd go there and buy T-shirts and hats, and you couldn't actually drink whiskey at the festival. So that's the first one. I remember I said common sense. That's the first thing, is how can you do a bourbon festival without actually bourbon? The answer to that was the law was a little vague. It didn't really allow them to bring whiskey and sample directly to consumers. So we've got that worked out over the last couple of years. So last year, 2020 was going to be our first year of actually doing that, where distillers could sample their product directly to the consumer. And obviously COVID prevented that. So we went to the virtual event and kind of took all of our educational pieces that are very important to the core of the festival also, but we just did that on our YouTube channel. So there's a lot of great content out there that we put out that if you haven't seen it, I would definitely encourage you to check out the Kentucky Bourbon Festival YouTube page. Steve Coombs, who is kind of our content coordinator, did excellent work last year, and we pivoted within 3 or 4 weeks. We went from what was going to be at the live festival to setting up video production, shooting each one of the segments, making sure it was safely done, because we had some of the top, the master distillers and the icons of the business here. So we wanted them in a safe environment. And then we debuted in October. So I believe that while less than ideal, it did 2 things for us. One, it showed the distilleries that we were committed to doing high quality educational components. And it also allowed us to have something that's kind of evergreen and allowed a lot more people to see that normally wouldn't be able to see. So normally, and you've been to the festival, you go there, there's 50, 60 people sitting in front of Fred and Freddie Noe telling stories, but there's no record of that after it's done. And only those people got to see it. So now we got Fred and Freddie together with Eddie and Bruce Russell, and they're talking about all the different fun things over the years. So that's just one of the examples. So a lot of people were exposed to the festival for the first time through the virtual component. So if there ever was a silver lining in that dark COVID cloud, it was that fact that virtual event went off so well for us, and it really did kind of tee us up for what we built for this year. That's going to be coming up in a little over 3 weeks. Not that anybody's paying attention.
Steve, you mentioned Steve Coombs. He and Kelly Ramsey from Art Eatables did the best. I've been to 2 of them. They do the best bourbon, chocolate, and Kentucky ham pairings.
I was going to say, if Steve's involved, there's got to be ham somewhere.
Country ham.
Yeah.
Thin sliced.
Thin sliced.
Oh,
it's
my
amazing.
God. And the pairings. Yeah, I've been to a lot of whiskey dinners and food pairings with whiskey, and oh my God, though, I wanted to go out and buy one of those giant hams, as big as Tiny Tim kind of hams, but I figured I could never get it home.
Well, true story too. Steve actually has a commercial restaurant grade slicer in his kitchen. So I've actually seen him sitting there slicing off some ham for little tastings that we did it privately as we're doing some meetings for the festival. So he's definitely committed.
So now as far as I know, the festival is sold out, right? Is that correct?
Correct.
So,
and that was probably the biggest change to the actual operation of the festival, beyond distilleries being able to bring their whiskey and sample it. So that's huge. That's the biggest. But we went to a fenced perimeter with a gate. Partly last year, I was going to manage how many people were going to be allowed in the venue just for COVID restrictions, and it's still very much part of the reason why it's there now. But we went to a 21 plus event. And we sold tickets, and they're $10 tickets. So it was something, okay, we've got to manage it. There's an expense associated with fencing and doing all the operational things we had to do. So we felt, a $10 ticket for everything that you're going to be able to get at the gate was a not just a fair price. It was a pretty spectacular value. And Marty, I mean, everybody who paid $10 to walks in that festival is going to get a wee Glencairn, and that alone is probably a $10 or $12 MSRP, right? On to the public.
These are worth like $150 a piece.
Okay. See, back to the value. And a challenge
you're
coin.
Standing around Marty, in which case they just kind of appear out of thin air and shower into your hands. It's
a wonderful thing.
Yeah, he's a glass shutter.
So that really is that was the foundation for everything that we built. In order to be a serious and world-class whiskey festival, it had to be 21 plus. We've got 3 times the number of distilleries that have ever been involved with the festival in the past. Here, over half of the distilleries in Kentucky are going to be at the festival and sampling all weekend. So that's huge. But you had to have the 21 plus. You had to have the fence, the ability to manage the flow. And it's just, I take a little corner of a little page out of my Churchill Downs Kentucky Derby experience, and which is where I was before I came here to the Bourbon Festival. But so a lot of the things you'll see at the Bourbon Festival if you've ever seen or been to Derby on Derby Day, a lot of the tenting and a lot of the kind of the signage and the nice quality things that you'd expect at a world-class Bourbon Festival is what you're going to see here. So, and I mean, always all due respect to the community and the volunteers and the people that have built this festival, because anybody who knows anything about putting on an event, regardless of size, you've got to have some pretty strong backs. You got to have some volunteers that are able to execute. So that aside, the old festival just was getting kind of tired. It was straw bales and bounce houses and strollers on the lawn, and a beer garden was the focus because you couldn't drink whiskey. So common sense again, whiskey festival equals whiskey and all those other things that weren't important to showcasing the whiskey and the people who make it, which is what Steve Coombs will say daily when I talk. This is about the whiskey and the people who make it. And so all of those things that were no longer aligned with that vision went away. And it allowed us to really focus on the pieces that not only the consumers want, the fans of whiskey, but more importantly at this point, what the distilleries have been telling us for the last couple of years we needed to do. We were starting to lose support from the distilleries. And as you know, 10 years, 15, 20 years ago, there weren't a whole lot of whiskey events out there. And we had kind of the wide open lane. Well, over the last number of years, even around Kentucky, there's more and more competition for the attention of these distilleries. The dance card was getting full, and we were getting left off the dance card. So what we did is we listened to the distillers. First, we asked them what we need to do, and then most importantly, we listened to them. And then in a couple of weeks, they're all going to be able to see how we executed on that. So
it was weird over the years trying to explain people what the Kentucky Bourbon Festival was, because I mean, one of the first things you had to explain was, there's not really a festival. It's a bunch of stuff that all happens the same week.
It was very fragmented. And that is one of the questions that we heard during our surveys is, where exactly is the festival? That's not exactly a good question to have be the number one question that people asked is, where is the festival, and how do I get to sample whiskey? I mean, so those questions will all be answered this year, because we're densely, and I don't mean dense from a public safety issue, but densely programming 2 city blocks in Bardstown, where 35 distilleries will be on the lawn. And the cool thing about that is you have all your Maker's Mark, Heaven Hill, Lux Row, Four Roses, I mean, all the bigger guys, but we also have over half of that are crafters that have never been involved with the festival in the past. So you will not only see the obvious, the more the legacy heritage brands, but you'll also see a lot of the craft that this is really one of the first events that they've ever done in some cases. So there, a couple of them were actually surprised, like, how did you even know we existed? Thanks for calling us. I mean, how did you know about us? And so there's a few of those that are going to be there. So I'm excited for the consumer, because if craft beer consumers come over and act the same way that they would at my beer festivals, you come in the gate and you do that quick visual check of who you see, the brands that you see, the big guys that are right on the beachfront property, right inside the main gate. But you go deep into the store, so to speak. You go to that back row and you find all these little craft distilleries, and then you work your way back up towards the front. And so I'll be interested to see if that plays out like I think it will. I think people will come in the gate and they'll scatter. It'll be like a big playground for them, and then they're going to go to the four corners and just really see what they can discover.
Donald Snyder just brought up a question that was on my mind.
Yeah.
Are we still doing the barrel relays?
Yeah, absolutely. And that is the one component from the old festival that we brought forward. It's such a cool tradition. And Marty, you and I
assume everyone wanted that.
Absolutely. The distilleries wanted it. The locals who come out and cheer on their friends and family. But it literally is something that I feel going forward has a true international component to it. Marty and I have talked about that. He's been kind enough to fire off some distilleries that have, Scotland and Ireland and, certainly Japan, Canada. What I see this thing morphing into is more than just a Kentucky Bourbon Festival World Championship Bourbon Barrel Relay, but a true World Championship Bourbon Barrel Relay where you have tryouts and there's a Team USA versus Team Canada versus Team Scotland versus Team Ireland. And so, I think that is going to be what we are going to see in the future. We've been talking to a couple of sports networks about covering it.
Whoa.
The Ocho, ESPN.
The Ocho.
Yeah,
I would love to be on the Ocho. But, I grew up in Wisconsin watching the World Championship Lumberjack competitions, and I'm remembering even as a kid how cool that kind of was. I wouldn't sit there and watch it all day religiously, but I would come across it and we'd watch it for a while. And there's absolutely no reason why the barrel relay should not be on there. It is such an art. It is such a cool thing to see, these 500-pound, barrels out on a track and then coming in and clocking them just perfectly. And it's going to be very cool this year. Obviously there's some COVID impacts. There's some of the teams that have company, restrictions that they're not allowed to get together and practice. That kind of hurts, but we hope that that'll be minimal and that we'll have a really good show for everyone. And that's the one piece of the festival that's actually free to the public still. So it's outside of the main fenced in area, right behind it. So if anybody's been there before, it's right behind the St. Joseph's Church and School out on the lawn there. So we thought that was really important too, is to make sure that we had some things that were available for everybody to enjoy, regardless of their, whether they got a ticket or not.
Just beware of the Scots. If you get Scottish guys involved, they do Highland games. You've ever attended Highland caber toss, hay toss and stuff? Those guys.
Are you saying they're just going to start throwing the barrels around?
They could.
Yeah.
Can you imagine Ian Logan? That thing. The barrel looked like this in his hands. He'd just pick it up.
How long is the race?
Huh?
How long is the race?
Well, it's against the clock, so you have teams going against the clock, so it'll take a couple hours. It'll be 11 a.m. to probably 2 p.m. on that Saturday, the 18th.
But the actual course is what, 60 feet?
Yeah, there's a couple of turns, and then they get up to the rick, and then they have to get it up into the rick and have it clocked right. But this is so serious that it's not just the track that we put up for the festival. A lot of the distilleries have built their own tracks at the distilleries in practice. So, I mean, it's, if any sense of how serious it is, it's serious competition. And, you know, it's men's and women's individuals, and there's the teams. So it's a pretty impressive people out there. And it's not always the big strapping people that you expect. I mean, there's some surprises out there with some of the people that, you know, you can be strong and sinewy.
Yeah.
Clocking is the
Like
key.
me. That's what bad people describe me.
I've got a Planes, Trains, and Automobiles quote
people.
in there, you know, but she's short, but she's strong or something like that. First base come out sideways. Get your behind out of the truck.
Randy just has the Steve Martin, all the Steve Martin movies on DVD.
He's a legend. Anyway.
So where typically the kind of the hub of the Kentucky Bourbon Festival is in Bardstown.
Right.
It's still in Bardstown, but it's not going to be in the, what was that, the Oscar and Emmy Getz Museum Square. You moved it somewhere else?
Nope,
No.
it's right on the front lawn of the Oscar Getz Whiskey
It's
Museum.
Still there.
Mhm.
Still there.
Yep.
God, there's shade
Yep.
there.
So if you, and next door, the city block to the north of us is City Hall, and also very full of trees. So that's the two blocks that we will be programming. So absolutely, if you search for the Oscar Getz Museum or Bardstown City Hall, I mean, either way, the GPS will get you right to, and that was part of the problem. There were some things there, but all of the events were held out at various different venues, and partly because of COVID, but even last year, pre-COVID, we had made the decision that we're going to develop the core event first. You know, the low-hanging fruit, do fewer things much better was my motto when I came into this, and then we can scale it accordingly as we go forward. But if we don't get the core piece right, then all these other satellite events don't matter, because you know, people want to come to the festival. They want to have a venue. They want to have all of the experiences right there. And so, I mean, again, as we go, you know, the distilleries, you all know how many millions and millions of dollars these distilleries have invested in their properties and their gift shops and their tour centers and restaurants in some cases, and you know, hotel developments and things that are coming down. You know, those, it's important for people to be able to go out and see those, but it's also important to have that hub and then kind of breathe people in and then turn them loose to get them out into the distilleries. But we want them, you know, educational and the entertainment piece to be on us, and let the distilleries focus on the whiskey and then the people who make it.
You know, Liz and I were talking. Go ahead, Liz. You were going to say something?
Oh, I was just going to circle back to the educational programs. What are some of the main, you know, talks that are going to happen during the week?
Well, and that's a great question. And there's two tracks. So there is the free education, which is included in the $10. So if you really want to split hairs, it's not free, but it's free to the people once they get into the festival. And those
Free
are
with quotation marks.
Yeah. Great quality stuff. And then we have a premium education piece that is in a separate tent with a separate ticket. And it's a smaller 40 to 50 person max classroom. And that will have, outside of the main lawn is the free talk. You know, there's not going to be sampling or pairings, things like that. And then the next step elevated experience would be in the premium program tent. That will be the classroom where you actually can take your best shot at doing blending. You know, so there's a blending exercise, and like Brent Elliott from Four Roses is going to be a part of that as far as, you know, developing in the program. But there's the pairings, there's the how to make cocktails. So you actually have kind of a little mixology classes that will be going on. So the quality of the things that are going to be out on the main stage during the day, top-notch stuff. I mean, Fred and Freddie are going to be out there. So, I mean, there's, you know, those kind of talks, but then if you want that experience where you have the interaction and you have the food and the pairing, that's available to you too. And they're all sold out. Everything's sold out.
Plus, people can go visit their favorite whiskey writers, buy their books that are being autographed by those whiskey writers, while I'm probably sitting next to them. I don't know. Yeah, talking.
Passing out blending classes.
Yes.
Allegedly.
Yes. Yeah. That's a good reminder, Marty. I need to bring my my country ham book along and have Steve sign it.
Me too.
Yeah.
Damn.
So, I mean, it's going to be that kind of an environment. We've got the Great Tent, which is a 40 by 120 foot tent that's going to have our opening night Bourbon in the Air event. and then all the distilleries will be sampling to a small group, 500, 450, 500 people. Friday night, we've got a new event, Beam Family Barbecue. So that's a first for us as well. And then Saturday night, we've got the Rabbit Hole dinner experience, which I mean, it's their first time ever being involved with the festival.
Stepping right up.
We have 4 chefs that are all Top Chef television contestant winners. So they will be there. Each chef will be preparing a separate dish or a course. And then we'll have some music, and Cave will be talking about the different those different whiskeys that will be there, and then Sunday we wrap it up in that same tent with Blanton's. And if anyone knows anything about Blanton's and Colonel Blanton, there's the burgoo recipe that he had done. So back when he was still with us, he would tell his warehouse manager to go down and pick a honey barrel out of whatever corner, and then bring it up to the house, and then he would fix his big batch of burgoo in the big cauldron and invite friends. So we're mimicking that exact same experience on Sunday at the festival. So it'll be kind of a bourbon and burgoo, we're calling it. It'll be a brunch. And those are all sold out. But going forward, if anybody here that didn't get tickets, we're going to be on sale for the 22 festival here before Christmas. So we're going to try to move things up once that crystal ball plays out a little bit and we understand a little bit more about how long, if COVID is going to be with us always, then we have to make that plan. But yeah, I'm already looking ahead. I mean, we have ads that are out in a couple of the magazines that break in September. We've already got the 22 event creative done, and the dates are out there. And and then we're starting a barbecue festival in June next year. So there's a lot of that. So as soon as I can't even wait till this festival's done to get onto that stuff. I'm already working on 22 dates. So you can tell why I'm a little stressed.
What is burgoo?
Wow.
It's a stew, and
okay.
I think some of the mammals that were featured in there historically are not currently the mammals that are featured in the contemporary recipe. But suffice to say, there's a lot of good eating in there.
Mostly house pets now, Liz.
Yeah, not so much the wild animals anymore.
No, wild animals too hard to catch.
Too gamey.
Too bony.
Domestic pets, so easy. Come here, Fluffy. Boom.
Okay.
Stew. Ragu.
How bad would it be? I'm going to name my cat
forever and ever in a big cauldron.
Yeah.
Big cauldron.
Big cauldron.
Everyone dressed
Real
like
big.
kids around it, stirring it. So now in the past, all those satellite events always cost extra.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember some of the price tags on some of those were hefty. And I always thought, oh my God, you've got to be a wealthy individual if you really want to attend a good chunk of those during the course of, or just be a fanatical, bourbon drinker. But now that has that been toned down a little bit? Pricing is a little easier. Now you're concentrating the events together. So
right.
Yeah, this actually sounds a bit more egalitarian.
Yeah, that's what
Yeah.
Because whiskey is the common man's drink, or used to be. This common guy. And this common guy.
Sorry, are we taking that in a different direction, or?
No, I'm just saying. I mean, it's
No, I was asking Randy.
No. I mean, again, with the admission, we wanted to be still affordable and accessible. Contrary to some of the kerfluffle is the word we've been talking about around local. I don't get out of bed every morning to plan an event that excludes people. I really don't. I mean, we want anybody who's a whiskey fan or just getting into it and wanting to learn and sample. That's who we want. So there's some folks that just have traditionally shown us that they're not necessarily whiskey fans. They're all about the local, the party, the festival. But when it comes right down to putting their X number of bodies in front of these distilleries, which is what they're telling us they need to have, the ROI, that's why we did that. But no, you're right, Marty. I mean, some of those events were $300-400 for a ticket, and well attended. So what we did instead was spread out the fundraising component to the $10 tickets, $20 for all 3 days if that's what the direction you wanted. And then again, unfortunately, limited capacity on some of the bigger meals. I mean, we'd love to be able to put 200-300 people in a room, but we went to 150 people max for these events, and they're at $125 is the highest point. So I mean, you're getting a 4-course barbecue meal with 4 pairings, 4 different Beam products on that Friday night, plus a yet to be announced nationally known touring artist that will be playing a couple songs and kind of a unplugged or storytellers kind of a feel. And then on Saturday night, again, Rabbit Hole, not only are you getting your whiskeys for the pairings, but you've got 4 top executive chefs, all women. So that was something we thought would be kind of fun to showcase the ladies and what they're doing in the kitchen. And so we're excited about that. But again, for $125, you have all of that access. Plus, you got Kaveh there speaking. Friday night, you've got Fred and Freddie there speaking and telling stories and livening up the room. So we feel pretty good about the price point on that.
Yeah,
I'm still stunned that Rabbit Hole's the major. I mean, they're definitely playing in the big leagues now.
They are, and yeah, I mean, we literally just did our single barrel. We did 10 different distillery partnerships with single barrels, and we branded them for KBF for our 30th, and we just did the Rabbit Hole release on Saturday. Let me jump off camera just for a second here. It's if you haven't seen it, Alice in Wonderland theme. There's 6 different labels, all done by the same artist, and they feature 6 of the characters. So you've got the Mad Hatter, and you got the Headsman and the Queen of Hearts and all of that. So it's a contemporary view, though. So Alice is wearing the red Beats headphones and sunglasses and stuff. But they sold out in 14 minutes on Saturday down at Justin's House of Bourbon. So I mean, it was
not surprised.
Yeah. I mean, Blanton's came out. We did one with Buffalo Trace. We've done a Bullet. All of them have sold out within an hour. But I didn't know what to expect. Rabbit Hole. This is new. The single barrel program is brand new for them, and they've had a couple of different bottles that have come out recently too. But I mean, I was actually very, very surprised to see how quickly they went through. I'd like to think people are buying it because of the quality of the whiskey inside, but there's certainly the collectible nature of the labels.
Label doesn't hurt.
No, no. But and I got the chance to sit in on every one of these selections. So going from not knowing anything and having never done a barrel pick, we started off with Buffalo Trace and Blanton's on my first experience, and we've gone through to where the last one I think was Bullet, and sitting right there with Justin's, and Steve Coombs joined us, and I mean we put together some really nice bottles for sure.
Liz might have had something to do with that Bullet.
Really?
Right? Lizard? Well, yeah, Liz did a lot with the Bullet distillery. Mm-hmm. I mean, maybe that's the stuff you were tasting might have been made prior to Liz's involvement, but Liz, you go there. If you have a blue light, you can find Liz's fingerprints on almost everything in the Bullet distillery.
So descriptive.
Are any of the events going to be virtual as well? Is there a virtual component where people can?
No, I mean we toyed around with that, and by the way, Liz, I celebrate the fact that you're keeping us on target. The other two seem to want to kind of go all over the place. You keep bringing us right back on topic.
She's very good at that. Very good at that. Only because it's needed. Good God.
But back to the question, the virtual, we know we can do it well. We did it last year. So will there be a virtual component going forward? Probably. It just really comes down to time. I mean, Steve Coombs is busy with his other components of his business, and then so we'd like to do some. We're going to record everything. We're going to have 2 of those big digital video screens at the festival, one by the main stage where the education is going on, and then one in the craft area. So if you're down there at the craft area, you can still kind of see who's on the main stage and talking and going through all that. So we'll record all of that. That perhaps would be edited and then come back up on our YouTube channel. That's what I'd like to see. But we're shooting it as archival and on-site more so than with the intention of making it a virtual piece. But I think going forward, that is something that we're going to have in our mind as we are programming it. Last year we did virtual, and we're so glad to get back into the live festival, that I think the virtual piece is kind of like that was something that we had to do. We didn't really want to do it, but we had to do it, and it turned out well. So I think going forward, you'll see more of that kind of content. And again, it's a great audience builder for us. It gets us in front of people that maybe have never heard of the festival, or if they heard of it, they haven't been to it. So that's important to us. But it also, again, it's a great way to showcase our distilleries. They appreciate that, it's more than just what it had been, which was just being on the lawn and having some t-shirts and stuff to sell, to where now they're actively involved with our programming, and not just the 4 days of the festival, but they have some upside as far as ongoing evergreen kind of partnership too.
What about the gala? Is that a thing of the past now? It used to be great about 15 years ago.
Right.
It was a virtual who's who of all the big bourbon guys. It was so cool to see them all in the same room. You'd have Jim Rutledge, and there's Bill Samuels, who dropped out kind of like a pimp, but he'd dress in this big. He'd have this long black coat with frills and a crazy
sequin
hat.
top hat,
like Dr. Detroit.
Yeah, Dr. Detroit. There you go,
Doctor.
It was really fun to walk around, and you're shaking their hand. They're handing you a whiskey. It was a really great experience. And then you have the dinner afterwards, and there usually be some kind of presentation. But last time I went, there wasn't a lot of that anymore. It was I mean, there's still the walking around and drinking whiskey, but you weren't seeing the people from the distilleries anymore. Not really.
Right. Well, and it gets tough, No, well, it's a thing of the past and a thing of the future. So it's not happening this year. But you're right, Marty. I mean, you would see the executives there, and in the past couple of years, it had turned into, it was hard. They buy a table or two tables, and then it was becoming a chore for them to get people to go sit at the table. So the table wasn't sitting there empty and conspicuous by their absence. But so what we decided last year we were going to do is work really hard to get the executives back. That's really important. So the model that we were going to try to pull off this year, and it was going to be connecting it a little bit with Hall of Fame, with the Kentucky Distiller Association and the Hall of Fame piece. But the idea was, let's say from 6 to 8 is the closed industry dinner. So it's all of the distillery executives and the icons all together, but it's closed doors, so they can go in there and tell their stories and kind of let their hair down a little bit, and know that they're not going to have their adoring public hovering around them at all times. And then at, let's say, 8 o'clock, then we open it up to ticketed guests that would come in. A limited number of people would come in, and the executives would stay. We give them their private event, but that's part of the trade-off is, okay, now you stay when we open the gates, and now you meet people, you get your pictures taken, the red carpet stuff, whatever, sign bottles and, those kind of things. And, would have more of the public, party aspect to it. So 2 pieces into one larger 4-hour evening is the plan. But this year with the KDA and the Hall of Fame not being able to happen because of COVID, I mean, most of these folks that are either past Hall of Fame inductees or current are up there in years, and we were a little concerned about having that many older senior folks all together in a room. So we decided to put that on ice, and we're hoping to intention is to bring it back next year with the Bourbon Festival, and have maybe a combined class of 2021 and 22 or something to kind of get everything caught up. But that's the concept. So this year, the Rabbit Hole Dinner is kind of occupying that space on Saturday night, which is where we would hopefully in the future do something like that with the gala. It probably won't be named that. I mean, we're doing a lot of work to kind of distance ourselves from some of the, if nothing else, the names of events that have happened in the past that kind of conjure up a different idea. So immediately people would be comparing it to like it or dislike it. As soon as you say gala at the Bourbon Festival, people are comparing that event to what it used to be. And so it'll be an entirely different approach to it, but same kind of concept. I mean, the locals kind of call it the Bourbon Prom. That's the, go out and rent a tuxedo and get all dialed up and go to Bourbon Prom. So I still like that feeling. It'll have to be a little different going forward.
Yeah, I do too. I mean, I used to wear my tux to it. And I think one year we wore our kilts back when I was with Diageo. We wore our kilts, and people actually like that.
Of course.
But it's also always hotter than hell.
Oh my God. Oh my God. Thank you. Thank you.
Especially if you had a vest on, you just, it was
The
just like
first year I went, I can't remember, it was 97 or 98. The gala was actually outside under a tent.
Oh, wow.
Oh my Lord,
my
we
God.
sweat. Holy crap.
And that brings up a point. So if you're going to have a lot of this stuff intense, do you have cooling systems, little misters or fans? Because that is bourbon in the hot weather.
Mother Nature, baby.
One of my favorite memories of Bourbon Fest was the first year I went. We went out to Four Roses, to the Yellow House, and that was when I met Al Young. I was on a tour through the distillery, and there were a bunch of Czech reporters along, and they had a translator, so everything was taking a little longer, and I got separated with them. Al and I got out ahead. The two of us are just standing there, sweating like mad at 10 in the morning. And Al just went, God damn it, why can't we do this in November? Yeah, buddy. But, you don't do it. I mean, there's reasons you do it in September.
It's Bourbon Heritage Month.
Yup.
Yeah, but...
and some people are still, back then, some people were still on maintenance because nobody was making whiskey. Because you had plenty of it.
Can it be Bourbon Heritage Month and National Air Conditioning Month at the same time? Or big blocks of ice?
Big ass fan.
Big ass fan.
Well, speaking of that, Kentucky Straight Ice is a new sponsor, and they're the official ice of the Kentucky Bourbon Festival. And
Nice.
so they'll have nice big rocks there for you to have access to, Marty.
They do big ice sculptures and then put fans around it. That will cool the air. Just a little tip for you.
I spent a lot of time standing by an ice sculpture that year.
Yeah.
Didn't really help.
Hugging it. You can see Lou's the impression of Lou's body on it.
There are actually pictures of me leaning up against it. Yes.
Insert something into it.
Uh-huh.
Quick, refreeze it.
We were all real jealous of the guys with the kilts.
Yeah, well, believe me, you don't want to be. That's like
wool.
wearing a wool blanket around
true.
your waist on a 90-degree day.
Well, and so I mean, it'll be. I mean, it'll be. It is Mother Nature. I mean, both parcels of property are full of mature trees, and so we're trying to position them. But no, I mean, there's a lot of tents that are going up at the distilleries in. A couple of them have their, their trailers and things that they've had, wrapped and branded real nicely, and that'll all be there. But, for obvious reasons, we're trying to keep it as much open air as possible. Just it lets us manage and lets people feel a little bit more comfortable. I mean, we're going to do all of the COVID testing, even if it's not required, which I'm sure it will be by then. But temperature checking at the gate, we're not requiring proof of vax or a negative test within 72 hours like some of the places have. We're not mandating that. I mean, that's not going to be something that we're getting into unless we have to, with the governor's office. And so we're monitoring that daily. But hand sanitizers around, we'll be doing, the Clorox wipes and stuff on all the high touch point areas and, trying to do everything we can that way. So
just so you know, my body temperature is always a steady 103 degrees. So just so you guys know, I'm just giving you a heads up. My
normal temperature is about 97.1. So
yeah, that's what I do.
Just a cool kind of guy.
Yeah, I come in cool.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So Liz and I were talking yesterday about how people get into. Well, we were talking about this how there's a whole thing where just how intense a lot of whiskey people are. Where they're delving into the nucleus of what this whiskey's made of. And these are just your average enthusiast who really, unless you're going to make it, why do you care? But is there going to be an aspect? What? Go ahead.
Said people are curious.
I understand they're curious, but they're curious to the point of boring me.
Whoa, there it is.
Oh, it's true. I hate it when people, it's like they don't stop and just enjoy it. And the fun of whiskey to me is sitting around with friends and you're drinking and you're enjoying it. And yeah, once in a while you'll comment on the taste. That's great, but that's part of the experience. It's not all of it. And then breaking it down is like, and nobody does that to any other,
Well,
very few.
I wrote a column about this one time. I was in a brew pub. I was actually on my way home from Bourbon Festival. I was at a brew pub in Ohio. I stopped in for brunch. And I heard a guy at the bar ask the bartender if he knew what kind of pig the bacon came from. And I'm just looking at him thinking, you just came to the Bourbon Festival, didn't you, you jackwagon?
Well, see, that's just that. That's like one of those scenes from Portlandia.
Yes!
I was about to say that, yeah.
Yes!
Where was the chicken? Can we go to where the chicken was raised?
Was it
Before I
happy?
eat it? At the same time, I do appreciate it. And like, if I were going down to a bourbon festival and you have these guys and women who make these spirits, it would be kind of cool. I'd like to see a Liz Rhoades seminar where she's breaking down how
How's this shit actually get made?
Yeah. How's that shit get made, Liz? I told you, Pat, we ran into Pat Heiss from Wilderness Trail, and
He'll tell you how that shit's made. You can't stop him.
he did a great seminar once I saw down here on fermentation that I thought was thoroughly enjoyable, and it opened my mind to a lot of stuff. I go, oh my God, it was so much better than the previous 10 years of people telling me about fermentation. That 1 hour. I do see it, but at the same time, I was just wondering if there's going to be an aspect a little more.
How you balance that?
Yeah, there will be. There's the aging and process and the barreling, that kind of thing. And
That's always fun.
so these guys can get as geeky nerdy as the next guy. You start talking like Danny Kahn. He brings it, and has a understanding of all the how the fatty acids and the proteins and the sugars, and which is intriguing to me. I don't need to necessarily know it for every time I drink something, but so we'll have that.
But that's why you have the different tracks, right?
Correct.
Not everyone will want to get to that level, but certainly
some people just want to know how to make a cocktail, how to make a good cocktail in their house when they're entertaining, and that'll be there. But plus you'll also have a lot of these master distillers or the blenders and so forth with the different distilleries at their actual locations. So to the extent that we're allowed to have that interaction, my concept was to have that 30-second interaction that a bourbon enthusiast is going to be able to have with that icon. I'm not sure how that's actually going to play out now this year, because there are some distancing and things going on again. But that's the idea of this festival, is to put the consumer and the enthusiast right in front of the person who made it, so they can ask that question or.
I assume the distilleries are still going to be fully staffed during this. I mean, that if people want to go visit the distilleries, that'll be. As much as it is now.
Right. Well, that's day to day, and that's kind of, depending on, what they're allowed to do. Their capacities a lot of times for the tours are tied to their, the food and beverage number of their dining area. So if they're 50% capacities, but I'm not going to say this definitively, but I do believe most of the tours are booked up in advance because of the festival, people coming in. And we had a Friday Sunday ticket, so you could come to the festival on Friday and then come back on Sunday to close this up, but we left Saturday open so they could go out and do distillery tours and not feel like they were paying for something they weren't going to use, because I want those guest books in this distilleries to be record numbers of people, not because we're being irresponsible, but from a health and safety perspective. But we want all the distilleries to realize, what a big, if they haven't already, what a big weekend this really is for them and for us collectively.
Yeah, one thing I can speak from experience, just working for Glencairn, is the impact the Kentucky Bourbon Festival has had on distilleries as far as their tourism and visitors. In the past, they always get swamped because they always order more glassware, tons of glassware prior, and that's how I always gauge it. That's the only way I think and see things now. Unless you're buying glassware.
Well, I will tell you also, Marty, as long as we're here in front of everyone in the world, my single biggest investment for the festival is Glencairn Glassware.
Boom! Right on target. That's right.
No, but to your point, though, and we've spent a fair amount of time talking about my vision and what we're doing differently as a group going forward. But to your point, this festival has always been a big weekend for the community. It has nothing to do with Randy, has nothing to do with what we're doing with this year's event. So there's been a lot of really good things done over the years. So I can't speak enough to that, because this isn't about me coming in to fix something that was just drastically broken. Did it need to be updated? You know, I always say that the industry got very sophisticated and the consumer got very sophisticated, and the festival just happened to be kind of lagging behind. And I'm the fast forward button on the remote control. So I kind of got us hopefully into a point where we're synced up with the distilleries and the enthusiasts' expectations. But my gosh, for 28 years, this festival has happened that third weekend in September, and it's always filled the hotels, it's always filled the shops, the restaurants. These industries, the spirits industry responded to that. I mean, they started building these visitor experiences and expanding them. Some of them are on their second and third phase expansion. Some of them are just getting into the, sticking their toe in it right now. But no, this is always a big weekend. Bardstown's a very small community, so that impact is felt more there than you might if you're in a bigger city where you could come in and 10,000 people wouldn't even be felt. But this definitely 10,000 people coming into Bardstown and going around that weekend will definitely have a good positive impact for sure.
How's Bardstown? I mean, how are they reacting to the changes in the festival?
Yeah.
Well, it's surprisingly, last year when we announced the festival, and then we announced that we're pushing it back 30 days into October because of COVID, and then we announced that unfortunately we're not going to have the live event, we were going virtual, we used the exact same methods of Facebook, internet, our website, e-news blasts out to people that were subscribers, newspaper articles, interviews with the radio, all of that. And not one person showed up at the festival. Well, this year, we started talking about it actually in December, and we talking about tickets going on sale. You're going to need a ticket. I've done 5 different interviews with the newspaper editor about the changes to the festival. We went on sale in March under the 50% COVID restrictions, which is what we at the time was where we thought we'd be, and it sold out. The VIP sold out in 2 hours. The general admission tickets sold out in a matter of 2 weeks. By the time we got into April, I was pulling back advertising to talk about buying tickets because we had already sold out. So I mean, I was pulling back ads. We had no way of anticipating that kind of a response. I mean, I partly think that it would be the 4 of us sitting in the park with 5-gallon buckets drumming on it at the time. People would have paid to see it just to be outside. I think that's a little bit of it, but I do
that
believe,
event if you want.
Yeah, absolutely. I've got a bunch of 5-gallon the Home Depot orange buckets too. So I've got like the whole Neil Peart drum set of buckets. I can pull that one off. But no, I think it's people responded to the changes of the festival. When they heard that we were going to be able to actually sample directly there, boom, people went crazy. When they saw the educational stuff that was sold out later than the tickets, we kind of staggered them once we got into the year. That's not the ideal way to do it probably, but we couldn't sell everything at one time because we didn't know what we were going to be able to do in March. So we wanted to make sure we had the tickets on sale. Boom, sold out. We came back with the premium events and the dinners and those kind of things with the separate ticket. Boom, sold out in a matter of a week. We had those sold out. But so it's hard to tell how the local folks didn't all get the memo, because we literally did for 4 months before tickets went on sale. We were talking to everybody who would listen to us, and but unfortunately, we did sell out. But I will always remind people that unless it's changed in the last couple of weeks, which I don't think it has because we haven't sold any tickets, Bardstown is the -- 1 zip code for ticket sales. So there are a lot of people in the Bardstown community that did know they had to buy tickets. That did get their tickets. They're very excited about having their tickets. So, but it's a transitional year. Change is difficult. I mean, I get it. A lot of people haven't been kind to me or to us in our decision making, and they've accused us of hiding behind the COVID pandemic as far as why we're not going to let more people in. But 9,000 people in that park-like setting with all of those tents. I mean, we've got 90 different tents out there between the distilleries, the marketplace vendors, the food trucks. I mean, 9,000 people, we have no idea of knowing what that's going to look and feel like because it's the first time we've ever done it this way. So, my board chairman is David Mandel, the founder of Bardstown Bourbon Company. And he said it's just not logical for a new business like our new business model to test it at 100% capacity. It's just not good business. So aside from COVID restrictions, and I believe that 50% capacity has always been the number we wanted to stay at, we're creating a boutique experience where we're sensitive to people standing in lines all day. I don't want to stand in line when I go to a festival, especially if it's 95 degrees out and you got restrooms, you got food trucks and all those things that are going on. That's not a way to spend a day at a festival, standing in line 2/3 of the day. So, but there were some people that were unkind, and I think a lot of it snowballed that we were doing something to exclude people, that we didn't want them there anymore. And every chance we've had, we've said that's absolutely not true. We couldn't have any more. The distilleries, and Marty, you get this. I mean, we deal with this 2 or 3 times in the last couple of months. I ordered 9,000 glasses to get 9,000 people that come to our gates a glass. I ordered 9,000 of those little challenge coins with our 30th anniversary on. They're sitting right now in a shipping container somewhere off in the Pacific because they can't get in and get to me. But I can't just go and order, hey, Marty, by the way, can you order me another 3,000 tickets because now we're in August and I can, you probably could. I mean, you probably could get me some glasses.
I think you just did. Randy, you just ordered. So, yeah.
But, and then the distilleries, again, for the first time ever in the history, the distilleries are able to sample. So they've got, as you know, there's not just a spigot you turn on and you can just crank up production and get some more whiskey for this festival. So when we told them in February and March what our ticket number was going to be, we stayed true to that. It's not fair to them to all of a sudden dump 2,000 more tickets on them just because we could. And I've always said, just because you can do something doesn't mean it's a good thing to do. And I'm sure there's a lot of examples that you guys have in your minds of just because you can't do it, it's not a good thing. So, but next year we'll reevaluate. It's not about a beer garden. It's not about the bounce houses. It's not about the funnel cake stands and the strollers and the face painting. It just can't be that anymore. Those years have happened. The distilleries and the people who are buying tickets expect more of us, and that's what we're going to deliver. And that's who we have to be primarily focused on is the enthusiasts. And I mentioned I came from Churchill Downs, and everybody on staff would argue, but who's more important, the sponsorship people or the ticket sellers and all the millions of dollars that Derby would make? And my boss came up from the backside and dealing with the horses. And he says, the horsemen are the most important people. Without the horsemen, you don't get the horses. And if you don't have 20 horses in that starting gate, you don't have the Derby. So in our instance, our horses are the distillers. If we don't have those distillers involved, if they go to, and Bourbon and Beyond is a good example. There's competition for their attention. It's not about competing for the guests. I've never been in a competition with Danny Wimmer and the Bourbon and Beyond for guests, but I absolutely am competing with him for the attention of those distillers, the investments that they're making in our festival. So even if we have no restrictions next year, I don't see us just arbitrarily saying, okay, next year 20,000 people can come. I mean, maybe we go up to 12,000. Maybe that's the right number. Maybe 9,000 is the right number, and we just decided to stay there. So,
are there any satellite events that some of the distilleries are going to do? Like I think it was Old Forester always had that little jazz night, jazz and cigars.
No, Heaven Hill did
the jazz,
bourbon, cigars and jazz. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And Four Roses did Let's Talk Bourbon. Brown Forman, Woodford Reserve would do something. Makers would do something. Beam had the little gathering over at the Beam home, in the man cave and everything. But last year that didn't happen because of COVID. So when we still thought we were going to put the festival on, they all said, hey, we'll put all of our resources here to build the core event, and then we'll play it by ear. And that's kind of where we are now. I would love to see the distilleries doing evening events that aren't sanctioned by the festival or connected. In the past, we had to be the box office. We took all the ticket money and did everything. And then I would love to see these distilleries plan events that people can just go to and separately. So it's like you guys are in town for a conference. So during the day, you program the conference, you go to the classes, and then there's the dine around. You have options at night to get out around Louisville and experience it. That's what I'm thinking is probably going to be the model of the festival, to where maybe we're closed down at 7:00 at night so people can get out and do all the evening fun events at the distilleries. Maybe there's still some kind of entertainment and things going on that we would still produce, but I would love nothing more than to feel like we've accomplished what everybody needed between 10 a.m. and 7 p.m. and let people go out and experience the community and get out and let those cash registers ring and check out these multi-million-dollar investments that the distillery partners have made in their own venues.
It's kind of what happened with Whiskey Week in Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
Whiskey Fest would be Friday or Saturday night, and then the rest of the week, the distillers were doing their own events. And Marty, yes, Marty.
It was me and Mike Miller that started Whiskey Week. A lot of people don't know that, but unsung hero. I'll probably be buried in an unmarked grave. I was wondering, though, Randy, because there's so, as you mentioned before, I mean, Kentucky has kind of exploded with different events. You have the Bourbon Classic, which the Bourbon Review Boys put on. There was the Bourbon Affair, which I believe was supposed to be teaming up last year with the Bourbon and Beyond.
Right.
Bourbon and Beyond, the prior year, there were some bourbon stuff, but it was less bourbony than it was the year before. It was more just a music festival. But you also have Bourbon Women is based with Peggy Noe Stevens and Susan Riegler out of Kentucky. You ever think about bringing them all together for one super group?
Well, this year on Friday night, now that you mentioned it, we're doing the Bourbon Society Soiree, which all of the main bourbon societies in Kentucky have been invited to kind of get together and meet and greet and socialize. And I like to see that grow to where, everybody does their own barrel pick. So maybe there's a competition where each society brings their submission for getting crowned the best barrel pick of so those kind of things going on, like the Bourbon Women are involved and the Black Bourbon Society in Louisville and Lexington and Frankfurt and Paducah, Bowling Green, all of those soiree people, society people have been invited. But as far as like doing like a super band where it's all of the different events, I don't know. We all kind of have our own little niche, and we've got our own mission statements, and we're a 501c3 charity, so there's a mission and what we do with the proceeds from our events and how we do that. I've kind of said, look, there's 51 other weekends of the year. Let's focus on my weekend is us, and everyone else has an opportunity to be in there and program something. So it's not out of not wanting to be neighborly and collaborate if possible, but I don't know. It's a great idea. I mean, I would like to do more collaborations, and like New Orleans Bourbon Festival. They're 3 or 6 months before us or 6 months after us, depending on which way you look. So unfortunately, they had to cancel. They were supposed to be going on. I think was it this week? Last week. Last week. So we talked about I'll go down there in March and have a KBF booth, promote the festival. And they were to be coming up here. I think they're still coming up informally, but they're Tracy and Barbara and a couple of the board members are going to come up here and check us out. So, there's those kind of collaborations where we can cross promote without anybody think now we're getting tangled up in the spokes at all with getting too close. But no, I'm very collaborative. If it makes sense for everyone and everybody can still kind of further their mission and gain audience and have, cover your costs, at least make a little money if you can. But I'm always open to that kind of thing.
What would be kind of cool is it's an idea, and I don't know where it would go. But if you go to a Highland game, they have tents for all the various clans, right? All the Scottish clans, and you go and you talk info and talk clan history. But we have Jim on watching the show from Australia. And I know just from Facebook, there's a couple of really big whiskey groups in Australia. I think it'd be really cool, especially as you say, as time goes on, you start, bringing the Canadians and the Irish and the Scot. Everyone you have these different whiskey groups from around the world who can maybe have little stands within a tent, and people can go and sign up and commiserate. And
are these bourbon
share
people?
Information, huh?
Are these bourbon people or that other whiskey?
Well, they can start off being bourbon people. The Australian, there's an Australian group that's a bourbon group. But as time goes on, then you want to share, Lou, the bourbon and the Scotch. People get together and there's love.
That'll never happen.
No love.
Dogs and cats living together, mass hysteria.
The bourbon people in the Bardstown once threatened me when I offered to bring out some Scotch. And the guy was poking me in the face. Yankee, get out of here. And I go, what the hell?
Go back to Chicago.
I hear they do that kind of stuff up there. Take it home with you.
Why, you degenerate. Get that Scotch.
We pulled out a bottle of wild turkey on Isla one time. It wasn't pretty.
Really?
Yeah, they got kind of salty about it.
Well, on Isla, salty is the key.
Oh yeah, it's the coin of the realm, as it were.
The ocean spray.
Yeah.
And speaking of Bardstown, and one of the fun thing, I don't know, it would be interesting to see if it continues. Lou, I remember going and meeting Lou when he was at still at Whiskey Advocate. You and John Hansel and used to hold court at the gazebo. What's that called?
Oh no, that wasn't us. That was another group. We just happened to be there.
Well.
Yeah.
It was still. I mean, it was kind of a cool thing because again, different people from a lot of people in the industry, but also enthusiasts.
I remember seeing Jimmy Russell and his wife there.
Yeah.
One night. Yeah.
And what was that? The General Nelson Hotel?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
It's a little motel. That was the fun stuff of the Kentucky Bourbon Festival. Is that that was after
the off book
hours
stuff. Yeah.
And that's where people right. You had to be in the know to go.
Yep. Brent Patoni skinny dipping at the Parkside. That was a. Yep.
I missed that one.
Did you miss it though?
I didn't. He jumped right over my head.
Yeah. Which was probably good for everybody.
Oh yeah. Anyway,
and those little things will happen. I'm sure little spin-offs and stuff. So
awesome.
We should probably wrap up. We're getting towards that time.
Yeah. Randy, thanks so much for joining us today. It was good.
This was great, Randy. You were really open. We appreciate it.
Thank you. No, I mean, it's transparency, right? And we know it's a transitional year. And, I still, at the end of the day, I still have to produce an event that stands up to everything we've been talking about. So that's, as soon as I hang up here, that's what I'm going to be back to, the 24-day countdown or whatever it is that we're at. So, but I appreciate the opportunity. And certainly I enjoy all of your work, individually and collectively. So thank you. Liz, I'm sorry if you didn't, is this the way it always is for you? With these two?
Yeah, I mean, there's an element of cat herding.
You seem like you got some questions, and you're a serious journalist, and then there's these two.
Knuckleheads.
No, I enjoyed it though. I enjoyed it thoroughly. Thank you for your time.
Yeah,
and
awesome.
I hope everyone enjoyed it too.
Well, we were kind of hoping that Liz would join us at the Kentucky Bourbon Festival next month to do the show live from there, the three of us, because we very rarely do the three of us. If the three of us do get together, it's the end of the world. I think so. I think that was written, as predicted. But she will be where? Hawaii, Guam?
I'll be in Seattle. So
same thing.
A little too far. Yeah.
But it's got to be like a designated survivor plan for you, so you all three can't be in the same room at the same time.
The line of succession would be broken if anything happened to all three of us at the same time.
Too important for that.
Liz, I hope you're the one with the codes with the football.
She's the smart one. She's the only one who knows how to enter the code.
Speaking of the three of us, so next week we have a very exciting session. We're interviewing each other. So I've been informed that there's some serious questions. So please come back next week and join us for that.
Yes, and then there's going to be some not so serious questions.
One or two.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Get ready.
Cheers.
Thanks, Randy. Thanks, everyone, for joining. Cheers, guys.
See you next month.
Cheers.
Bye, kitties.
Thanks,
Liz,
guys.
I'll see you soon.